Good afternoon, ExJWs. This is the Oracle coming in for a long overdue addition to my channel. For those of you that are new, I'd like to do a quick introduction. I am a third generation ex-Jehovah Witness. I have been out of the Jehovah Witness religion / cult for over 25 years. uh, Almost a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, I decided to add my voice to the ExJW community. I weighed about doing it because not only do I have a very busy schedule, and I realized that I wouldn't be able to devote a lot of time to this. I have a high profile position, and I realized that I would not be able to show my face because it would compromise my profession. Without getting into it any further than that, I realized that I actually could do videos. I could just show different aspects of where I live or something like that. I thought that the more stories that we share, the more that people hear about different things that they've had to endure, that people will realize that they're not alone, that they don't have to feel isolated. When I left the Jehovah Witness community many years ago, there was no ExJW community. There wasn't any references or resources I could go to, and I really felt isolated and alone, which affected me. As much as I thought that it wouldn't affect me, it did. So it gives me a lot of pleasure to talk about how I was able to survive and the different things that I went through. So that's my brief introduction. Today, the topic that I wanted to discuss is how Jehovah Witnesses emotionally manipulate non-believing family and friends. This is a very, very important subject because I see it all the time, even in people that have been out of the religion for many years. A lot of the people that I watch their videos, and because they still have to interact with Jehovah Witness relatives, or they hope to interact with Jehovah Witness relatives, they have to deal with some of that emotional manipulation. So not only am I going to share a few stories that I've went through, just so that people can hear, if you never heard of Jehovah Witnesses, or you're in a similar religion or cult, I want people to understand that it does happen more than you think. And I just want people to realize there's nothing wrong with sharing your story if it gives you a type of venting. I think it's hard to just sit on it and not discuss it or talk about it or share it with other people so that they know how to deal with it. So a little background for those of you that are new to my channel or have not heard my story. I come from an extremely dysfunctional family. A few of my family members that would have stopped me from ever doing an ExJW video are no longer here. My father, the short version is, my father married my mother when they were 18 years old. Both my mother and father were raised in the quote-unquote truth. That's a conditioning tactic. There's so many words that Jehovah Witnesses use to condition people, but for those of you that are not in the religion or cult or don't understand what the truth means, it's just one of those terms that they use to condition their members to think that what they are listening to is the truth. They also have terms like worldly versus brother and sister. So that's just sort of to explain it. But my parents were raised in this organization. In fact, my grandparents were best friends on both sides. So my parents have literally known each other since they were born and in diapers. So they got married when they were 18 years old. My father beat my mother. He cheated on my mother. He cheated on my mother with multiple women, but there was one woman in particular that he, decided that this was the one. There's a lot of things about that relationship that I found out later in life, and it's not even really important to the topic. I just wanted to kind of reference it as a brief introduction. My father joined the military. He was disfellowshipped. He joined the military, and the woman that he was cheating on my mother went on base and lived with my father with her 2 sons, committed fraud, and my mother found out about it because she took my brother and I to base to live with my father and was devastated to find out that my father had his mistress and her 2 sons on base pretending to be my mother, and my mother had a nervous breakdown. That's pretty much where I'm gonna leave the story and just talk about the effects of that. My father eventually married this woman. He has been disfellowshipped approximately 4 times. He's beat my stepmother. One time while he was disfellowshipped, he actually had an affair with a pioneer in the Kingdom Hall. My parents got divorced, of course, and my mother also got remarried. She suffered a lot of mental issues throughout the rest of her life and eventually died much earlier than she should have. My older brother, who I dedicate every single video that I do, is also deceased. My father was reinstated. After all of this, the last time he got reinstated, he moved to Georgia and started his life over. My father is now an elder. So that's just a very brief background on my family and my life. There's a lot that I have not discussed, but I left this cult when I was 17 years old, and I was actually disfellowshipped because I refused to come back to the Kingdom Hall. And my family was absolutely shocked. I was the first person in my family to adamantly reject this religion, and they could not believe that someone would be so bold about it. Now that I'm older and wiser, I could have handled my discontent much differently. I definitely was very vocal about my concerns and criticisms about the religion. But my family, because it was a 3rd generation situation, could not believe that when I got this fellowship that I wouldn't be doing everything in my power to try and get back into the religion. And I was adamant that I believed that the religion was false and that I would never, ever become a witness again. That they absolutely could not believe that I absolutely rejected this cult. And I used to challenge them every chance that I could, so they stopped talking about it with me and basically cut me off. The majority of my family does not talk to me. I've talked about some of the things that have occurred, but there have been situations where I have interacted with several family members. And this is what I want to share with the ExJW community and people that are outside the ExJW community to understand about the emotional manipulation. Another thing I just want to highlight is, although I'm highly educated, have a great career and all that, I'm by no means had it all figured out. I still didn't go straight through school, got my master's and all that within 8 years. I went to school, I didn't go for a year. It wasn't a straight road for me. And throughout my time trying to figure out how I was going to get my life together and what I actually wanted to study and what I was going to do with my life and deal with the fact that I actually was on my own and was trying to recreate my support system, I had to deal with a lot of emotional manipulation. There's a few stories that I want to share with the community. So, I was extremely close to my maternal grandmother, and even though I left the religion, I would still talk to my grandmother occasionally, and I would still visit her because I was the oldest granddaughter, and I was so close to my grandmother for so many years. It was just very difficult as she got older not to have any interaction with her. So I would still talk to her. I would still come visit. My grandmother would never, tell me I can't come in and I can't talk. And that's a very difficult part that I want people that are outside of the organization to understand. It's not easy because it's not natural to not to just reject talking to people that you've known since you were born. Making someone who makes a decision, I don't want to be a part of this religion, that they have to also discard their family is inhumane. It's not right. We adapt. I adapt because I'm a principled person, and I feel like if you're going to force me to go against what I believe in just to appease you, then I'm not going to do it. There's a lot of people that aren't that strong, but I've always just been a very determined, principled person, and I'm not going to live a life that is in direct conflict than what I believe. So I had went to visit my grandmother, and she was older. My grandfather had passed away, and she had asked me to come visit her several times. I didn't live in the area anymore, so I had went to visit my grandmother, and there was nobody else there. It was just me and her, and I had gotten her lunch, and I was asking her how she was doing, and we were talking. Now, at this point, I had really started to move up in my career. I had several degrees, several certifications, was taking care of myself. I was very proud. And my grandmother had never been able to graduate from college, had never gone to college, had, barely graduated from high school. And it wasn't because she wasn't smart. My grandmother was actually very smart. It's because she was a poor colored girl from the South. Those are her words. So she didn't have the opportunities that I had, but she had been conditioned by this religion. So we were talking about, just different things that I have been able to do. And my grandmother looks at me after, because I'm taking care of myself. I don't have to rely on a man. I can take care of myself on my own. So my grandmother was asking me about, what I got my degrees in. And she asked me about where I lived and what I was doing. And I thought my grandmother would be really proud of me. I wasn't selling drugs. I didn't have multiple children without fathers. I wasn't out, with a criminal record or anything like that. And my grandmother looks at me and she says, okay. And she shakes her head. And I said, well, why'd you ask me if you weren't interested? And she said, no, that's not why I'm shaking my head. I just wish you get your life together. So again, maybe because I had been out of the organization for so long, it just shocked me that she would say, I wish you would get your life together. I'm like, I'm actually more financially independent than you've ever been. I actually am, in the top 5% at that point of what people are earning in the United States. and I'm taking care of myself. You know what I mean? This is before I was with my mate, and I'm just looking at her like, why are you saying I wish you could get your life together? I'm actually mentoring people so that they can get their life together. And she said, you know what I mean. And I said, no, I don't. She said, well, you need to come back to Jehovah. I said, well, as I mentioned to you, I have no interest in the religion. And she put a hand on her head and she just sighed. She was like, I don't believe that. And I'm like, I don't know why you couldn't believe it. I've not gone to the Kingdom Hall on my own in many years. And she was like, well, you're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die at Armageddon. Is that what you want? And I was like, all right, well, I see that my time is coming to an end here. I just want to visit you. And she turned her face and smiled and said, no, we can talk about something else. But it was very awkward for me. And I felt that I wanted to start my story with just that one because, again, one of the tactics that Jehovah Witnesses do, the ex-Jehovah Witnesses, and people that are not in the actual religion is they give you carrots. They act like they're very, very interested in talking about any and everything that you want that has nothing to do with the religion. And then they'll, out of nowhere, interject a sermon, start talking about things that you've categorically said that you have no interest in talking about. Before I continue, I want to make a few statements. To me, it just shows the intellectual immaturity of people in that cult because they don't want you to discuss any religion or any belief system that is opposed to what they want for themselves. But if you do that to them, they will label you or they will refuse to interact with you at all. And my thing is, okay, I'm a pretty logical person. If you know that I don't believe in something that you believe in, and you feel that it is something that is going to stop you from interacting with me, don't talk to me. I've not changed my stance since I was 17 years old and graduated from high school. It has not changed at all. So don't call me on the phone and ask me to come visit you if we already have established that I have no interest in your religion. There's a trillion other things to talk about. I talk to people all the time that have different ideas about certain things, and I realize that that is not a subject that we will talk about because I'm actually intelligent enough to realize that you have to adapt your conversation to the actual person that you're talking to or the environment that you are in. Jehovah Witnesses lack that ability because they are so consumed with their cult that they can't have conversations outside of it. That is abusive and it's emotional manipulation. After we have agreed upon that we're going to have non-confrontational conversations, and it has been established that I have no interest in your religion, you have a choice. If you are so conditioned that the only people that you can talk to are people that absolutely believe in your religion, then we don't have to talk. There's billions upon billions of people on this earth. I'm sorry that my family members are so close mine that they can't interact with me because we have a different belief system, but I wish you well, move on. What I don't agree with is I do want to talk to you. Let's have a conversation. bring your family around me, and then you switch it. To me, that is emotional manipulation and that is abuse. And so I wanted to say that before I tell some other really, really amazingly disturbing stories about the emotional manipulation that I've had to deal with. The next three examples are surrounding my father. And as I mentioned, it was difficult for me because I didn't want to discard my father completely, even after he beat my mother. He's actually abused me as well, just physically. My father has a very bad temper. He's always been very misogynistic. He's beat my mother, he's beat my stepmother, he's beat me, he's beat my brother David. And I think we've all suffered because of that. But my father is a true Jekyll and Hyde. When he's good, he's great. He's an amazing speaker, he's highly intelligent, and my father loved his children. My father taught me that sometimes love is not enough. And I think if you don't know how to love, your idea of love may not be helpful for someone else. And when I was growing up, I literally didn't have a choice. My parents got divorced. My father married his mistress, and we had to go to my father's house on the weekend. We had no say in it. I literally divorced my parents when I was 16 years old. Again, I was ahead of the times in a lot of ways. My family was in shock on the things that I was able to get away with and the things that I demanded for myself, the things that I actually faced my family with. And I confronted both my mother and father about their behavior, the way that they treated their children, the things that they put my brother and I through. I was very, very vocal, and I read a lot, and I think that helped me to realize that there was more to life than just this Jehovah Witness ideology about children, staying in their place and the way that women were treated. And I'm really thankful for all the people and the education that I did get that opened my mind to how people should be treated and how children should be treated. So graduated from high school, started college, and I actually was not prepared for how difficult it would be for me to do just a very clean split for my family, because for 17 and a half years it had been nothing but my family. So I hit some roadblocks. I had started my own support system, had a boyfriend, we were living together, but I realized that I still had a hard time not talking to certain people in my family. So I did go to college. That first year, I was not able to complete it the way that I would have liked to. And I spent a lot of the money that I had. My father was very, very apologetic for the things that he had done to my brother and I. He used to call me, he used to come visit me, and he really wanted to make amends. At this point, my father was not a Jehovah Witness. My father was disfellowshipped and had been disfellowshipped for quite a few years. So my father said, listen, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm really trying to get myself together. I have a big, beautiful house, which he did. Why don't you come back home? You can go to college. I won't bother you, and you can get your life together. So because I realized that it was very difficult for me to just cut off my entire family. Mind you, my stepmother was a Jehovah Witness, but she was more like a passive Jehovah Witness. So I thought, okay, you know what? I spent most of my money. I am having a hard time doing this by myself. I talk to people all the time. They go to college, they had so much support, they had a support system. I didn't have any of that. My mother was completely mentally ill, had been uh, put in, psychiatric holds seemingly every 6 months. So it was, it was something that I thought would help me kind of balance myself out. I realized that maybe just being around my father and my brother who was living at my father at the time would sort of help me to get myself together. So I lived with my father, and I went to school. I had a job. So I really thought that I had no intention of staying there for a long time. And I thought that things would sort of pan out. I would keep working. I would get about 2 years of college under my belt. I would move out. And the thing that happened is my father got reinstated. As soon as my father got reinstated, within about 3 weeks, he confronts me. He says, listen, you can't live here if you don't go to the Kingdom Hall. I was absolutely blindsided by this conversation. I was, because again, let me back up. My father asked me to live with him. I did not ask my father to live with him. I had friends. I was dating someone. We were talking about moving in together. I was even considering going away to college and living on a dorm. But my father gave me the easiest and best opportunity, especially since, like I said, I was still dealing with the effects of having most of my family cut off from me, but at least my father was still talking to me. Even though we had a very tenuous relationship, if you will, I still wanted to see if maybe we had evolved and I could have a little bit of my family. What I wasn't expecting is that my father would get reinstated and then he became super righteous. So I come home from school and my father sits me down and he tells me that I must go to the Kingdom Hall. And my question was, why? He's like, because, I've talked with the brothers. A whole side conversation is how much elders are involved in people's personal lives. So he said, I have to go to studies now that I'm reinstated because I was out for so long. And so they've asked me about the makeup of my house. And I told them that my disfellowshipped daughter lives with me. And I said, well, did you tell them that you asked me to live with you? And he said, yes. He's like, but the context of me successfully getting reinstated is that you have to go to Kingdom Hall. I'm like, why is it any of their business? I don't want to be a Jehovah Witness. Going to the Kingdom Hall is not going to change my mind. And he said, well, you have a decision to make. I'm like, but I'm focused on school. I don't have a lot of money saved. You told me that I could stay here as long as I wanted. And he was like, those are the conditions. Let me tell you that I was really defiant about this. And my father and I used to have these huge debates. And at the moment he was going to put me out on the street. And I decided I'm gonna bide my time. So I was able to debate him because, again, my father's a very intelligent person and I'm a very good debater. I was actually on a debate team in high school. So I was able to sustain a few points so that he only made me go to one meeting, which was terrible for me. I saw a lot of people at the Kingdom Hall that I knew when I was much younger, and to go there and have to sit in the back, it was like an aspect that I felt was so incredibly evasive. My life was so beyond that. To go somewhere where people treat me like a leper was just abuse. Again, blindsided, emotional manipulation. My father, who had married his mistress, who had abused my mother and now my stepmother, had cheated on my stepmother with her best friend in his bed, and she was a pioneer at the time. She got this fellowship. It was like beyond that my father was trying to sermonize me and think that just because you go to the Kingdom Hall makes you a better person. I'm like, I know so much dirt on so many people at Kingdom Hall. Just because you have a title doesn't make you better than anybody else. But again, blindsided. Moving on, many years later, I stopped talking to my father a little bit after this, but I don't want to just hold this story up too much. Went on, got married, moved out of the state, just went on with my life. So many years later, my father decides to move from the state that he was living in, and he moved to Georgia. And he moved my grandparents with him. Again, my paternal grandparents are another, my grandparents never really stopped talking to me. Again, I just think they just were in it, but they weren't going to stop talking to their grandchildren. But my grandparents were getting much older. My grandfather had had a stroke, and that actually stopped by my house on their way to moving to their house in Georgia. So I actually got to see my grandparents, and I knew they were very, very old, and they didn't have a lot of time left. My father invited me, again, invitation, to come to his house and visit him and my grandparents. And I was like, you know what? Things have changed a lot. I'm not going into it, but I stopped talking to my father for 7 years. He wrote me letters, and he tried to make peace with me. I again tried to give him another chance. A lot of time had passed, and I was hoping that things could be different. And I wanted to see my grandparents. So my father invites me to go visit him and my grandparents. And I take off time from work. And I'm actually very excited to see the new house that my father had built and to spend some time with my grandparents. 2 days before I'm ready to leave, I get a letter from my father. I was shocked by it. I'm like, why is my father writing me a letter when I'm going to see him in 2 days? So I read the letter, and the first part of it was, again, I don't want you to be angry about all the things I did in the past. I feel so bad about it, etc., 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 etc. But then it goes into, I just want you to come back to Jehovah. It's like, oh no, what is this about? I just want you to reconsider coming back to the Kingdom Hall. I just don't want you to die. I was like, I can't believe this. It's been almost so many years. I can't believe that he's doing this right when I've already bought a plane ticket, right? I can't believe he's doing this. Like, I was so blindsided. That's the Jehovah Witness MO. They love to blindside you. So I didn't really know how I was going to handle it, because it was starting to get annoying. I feel like it's abuse when someone keeps continually bringing up something that you have unequivocally said as an adult that you're not interested in. And they have a choice. They have a choice to not talk to you. And if they don't want to talk to you because of that, then, stand on that. But don't keep playing games with someone. So knowing my father and knowing my own personality, I was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go see my grandparents. But if it gets really terrible, I'll leave. I had already sort of practiced how I was going to address things with my father. I'm a humanistic, philosophical person. I try to appeal to someone's logic and humanity. So that's the way that I was going to address things. Not talking about the Bible, not getting into scriptures, not using Jehovah Witness edited Bible or publications. I was strictly going to hit it from a humanistic point of view, which is I've told you that I'm not interested. Therefore, what is there to discuss? Are you saying that I don't have free will? Because I do have free will. As an adult, I have free will just like you do. You have the decision to make whether you want to talk to me or not, but you don't have the decision. You cannot make decisions for me. And every time he tried to go somewhere else, again, I'm like, I know JW objections and overcoming objections like the back of my hand. So that's not going to work with me. But I was really beyond annoyed. I had been giving my father chance after chance. Every time he felt guilty, he'd write me a letter, send me an email, call me. And, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. It's obvious that you're an abusive person and you take advantage of people that are not strong-willed. It just so happens that I'm your daughter and I'm actually much more strong-willed than you think. So you're not going to be able to bully me. But I was really disturbed by what happened when I actually got there. My father was nice to me he picked me up from the airport. He took me to the house. I got such a warm greeting from my grandparents, my stepmother. It was so nice. So beautiful. This is the last time I actually saw my grandparents alive together. I'm glad I took a lot of pictures. And that was literally the reason that I pushed myself to go, because I knew deep in my heart that that would be the very last time that I was going to see my grandparents alive. And I was like, if I have to deal with a little bit of you-know-what from my father, I can handle him. And I did. And I was able to talk to him very strongly. He can't bully me. And he put his sword down. But in myself, I was like, I don't know how long I can continue to have a relationship with him, because I don't agree with this. I don't agree with the mentality of the Jehovah Witnesses that believe that they're going to continually bring up their cult to you, their belief to you, no matter how many times you tell them that you're not interested. And again, when does it become emotional manipulation? When does it become abuse? Because if the situation was reversed and I started talking about my belief system, they would run down the street so fast you think you were in a track meet at the Olympics. You can't have it both ways. I want to talk about one last thing before I talk about how I was able to cope, and just some things I want to say to the ExJW audience in general. What did it for me? my last example of emotional manipulation. I was going to plan a trip to see my father. I know. My brother had died and my mother had died. Actually, no, let me change that. My brother had passed away, my father's oldest son. Excuse me. And it was devastating for all of us. My father had invited me to come to visit him a little bit after my brother had died. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. My throat was getting really dry. So I decided to go see my father because I was not able to go to my brother's funeral. And I wanted to see my grandparents again. I wanted to be with my family at this time because I was absolutely devastated at the death of my brother. And my father had invited me to spend some time with the family. He wanted to see his only daughter. And again, I'm hoping that things are going to be different. I still remember this like it was yesterday. I had, again, planned the trip. I did not get the tickets. That was the one good thing, but it was a week before. I was going to drive down. And I get a phone call from my father. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that you called me because I wanted to confirm the date that I was going to come in. And my father said, that's why I wanted to talk to you. I was thinking maybe I can just come see you when we come back up to go home. And I said, why, did something happen? And he's like, well, I don't think it's a good idea for you to come to the house. And I was like, why? Did something happen? You know, what's going on? And he's like, well, you know, I let you come to the house because I thought that you being around other witnesses and being around us would cause you to want to come back to Kingdom Hall. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, not this again. Is this man absolutely serious? So one thing I forgot to mention, when I went to visit my father the last time, I was told that my father was a ministerial servant. I was absolutely shocked. And as an aside, now I understand why there is such a sexual molestation and pedophilia situation in the Kingdom Halls. My father has abused women. He's had police called on him. My father is actually married to the woman that he actually cheated on my mother with. He has also had an affair with someone in the Kingdom Hall who was married. My father has been disfellowshipped 4 times. I absolutely cannot believe that a person like that would be able to get any type of position of authority in the Kingdom Hall. So when my father didn't even tell me, my stepmother told me that my father was a ministerial servant, I was absolutely shocked. Like, are you serious? But I guess when he moved to another congregation, that they don't do the checks that they should, or, you know, I've done some digging, so they go by how long ago it happened. I'm like, my father, he retired early, so he's going out putting in 80, 90 hours of their free labor, and he's getting in good with the elders. So all of a sudden, my father is now a ministerial servant. And I'm like, are you serious? Maybe that's why he's now, you know, hitting me with all this emotional manipulation about coming back to Kingdom Hall. So getting back to the situation when he called me on the phone, talking about maybe I should just see you when you drive up. When he drives up to visit our family. Let me just tell you that I absolutely went ballistic. I asked him, again, I'm a logical, humanistic person. Do you have some information about something that I am doing that has caused you to revoke your invitation? No, was his answer. Because I'm like, because there's nothing that has changed in my life or my lifestyle that should cause you to say, you know, I found out some information, you're doing drugs. I can't have someone coming in my house doing drugs. There's nothing that has happened. So you just arbitrarily because of your conscience, decide that because I don't want to be a witness, that you're going to revoke my invitation to your house. And I was like, you know what? You lost a son, and now you're going to lose a daughter. Because here's the thing: I'm never going to come to your house again. I'm actually done. And I told him, I'm actually done. I'm actually done with you. I'm actually done with your emotional manipulation. I've had enough. Your religion sucks, and the way that you treat your family members sucks. I'm like, listen, if you don't want to deal with me because I'm not a witness, say that from the beginning. But what you can't do is invite me to your house and then revoke your invitations back and forth. Because guess who's going to put their foot down? Me. And say, you know what? I'm not going there with you again. I was so angry at my father. When we were done, he called me back like 3 times apologizing. And, I said, you can apologize all you want. And he was like, no, I've talked about it with other people in the Kingdom Hall. And, you made some valid points and you can come down. And I'm like, no, here's the thing. I'm making the decision now. As an adult, as someone who actually is stepping outside this situation, I'm getting off of this bike. I'm not peddling with you anymore. You can't use my love for my family to keep manipulating me. You're going to change your mind again. It just all depends on what they put out in the publication. And I'm being emotionally manipulated by you. And I'm deciding that I am done. Doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means that I'm done. And if you can't see the damage that your religion is doing to people in your family that are not Jehovah Witnesses, I don't know what to tell you. If you think that this is from God, again, step outside of it for a minute. It's not right. If I invite you to my house and then 10 minutes before you get there, I call you and I say, actually, you know what? Because you like leather shoes, I can't have you come in my house. You're like, what the heck is going on? That's how I feel. And that's what you have done countless times to me. And I am no longer going to let you do it. I'm going to stop right here. I just wanted to share my stories with you because I wanted to tell people how did I get to a place of peace. I had to make a decision in myself, and it wasn't an easy decision. And my decision may not be the decision that you make, but I had to make a decision in my life that I had to love my family from afar. The only family that I talk to today are people that are not Jehovah Witnesses. I can't get involved with my father. I can't. And again, because I finally realized that there are some serious problems with the doctrines of this organization. And until they change it, you're going to have people like myself who are categorically not even going to communicate with people that are in that organization because of their inability to switch code. You can't just be one way and think that people are not going to react to it. It's not fair. If you make a decision, stand by your decision. And again, I know that my situation is not the situation of every single person. There are people that they're disfellowship. They may even have videos and their family members have never done these games. But I'm going to wager that a lot more people actually go back and forth because it's not natural to not want to talk to people that you're related to. I wanted to share my story, not as any way, shape, or form for people to be down and depressed, because that's not what this is about. This is about lay your sword down. I can talk about it. I can laugh about it. I can learn from it. I have great friends, I have a great mate, I have a great life, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things in my life that are not good that I've had to make peace with. And that's the whole reason that I make these videos, because I want people to realize, hey, you're not alone. When I started listening to ExJW videos and hearing stories that were so similar to mine, it actually made me feel better. And I said, hey, let me talk about an aspect that I know comes up a lot. Talk about some of the situations that have happened to me and how I made peace with it. Because that's what you have to do ultimately. Thank you so much for listening to me on this wonderful weekend. I hope you go out and enjoy the beautiful weather, and I will talk to you again soon.